Hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of Database Daniel. So we are going to be running some filters and hopefully trying to find as many leaks as possible, which we can address. And hopefully Daniel can recover from his downswing. Okay, so the first filter I'm running here is, let me open it and show you guys. Right click and click report statistics. No wait, that's wrong. No, click on more filters. Yes, that's right. So I double clicked 3-red light IP, 3-red light OP. So these are just some quick filters. So of course you can just add all the light 3-red hands yourself, but I'm a bit lazy to add everything myself. So I'm just going to be using the quick filters. So what do you notice? First of all, you should never 3-red a hand if you think it's negative EV. So in general, your 3-red bluffs should be break even actually. So we should not 3-bet crappy hands for the sake of widening our perceived image to get paid off with our good hands. So what this means is that with our light 3-bets, we should be breaking even and having a win rate of close to 0 big blinds per 100. But in this case, Daniel is losing an average of 1 big blind whenever he 3-bets with a crappy hand. So his loss rate is minus 107 for every 100 hands. Yeah, so that's basically losing 1 big blind per hand, which is a really large loss rate. The sample of 275 isn't the largest, but I still think it tells us something. He's probably doing something wrong post-flop. So let's look at some of his largest losses in post-flop play, and then perhaps we can fix either his post-flop issues, or if not, we should probably look towards tightening up pre-flop. Okay, so let's get started. So I have probably seen some of these hands before already, but let's just walk through them once again. Okay, so first hand we have 7-8 off. Daniel 3-bets with this hand. So should we 3-bet with this hand? I think it's way too loose. So I feel like, I think before this, Daniel didn't really fully work out his pre-flop game plan. So I think in the future he's probably not going to 3-bet with this hand anymore. So should we 3-bet with this hand? Definitely not. I would never 3-bet it myself. Against a button stealing range of like 50%, maybe Daniel might want to defend 25% of hands, at the very most 30% of hands. And 7-8 off is very far from the top 30% of hands. 7-8 off is probably like top 50 to 60% of hands. So I think this is unnecessary and reflects a lack of planning for the pre-flop. But okay, never mind. The opponent calls. The flop is Jack 9 deuce. So with a weak gut shot, I think it's fine to bet once. And Daniel faces a min raise. So he is getting 20% pot odds, but at the same time, if this guy is raising with a hand like King Queen, and he calls here and he hits the 10 on the turn, that would be really disastrous. So if he wants to float here, I think calling Queen 10 would be very standard, maybe even jamming if you think he's bluffing, because with 8 outs, you don't really need your opponent to fold all that often to make it a profitable shove. With King 10, I think it's reasonable to float. Same goes for King Queen. The gut shot straight draw is pretty strong. 10-8 I would definitely call. 7-8 I think is a clear fold. I think this is a pretty big mistake. So Daniel jam over the top. He doesn't believe his opponent. So let's analyze our opponent's stats. 13% fold to the flop. C-bet, call 50% and raise 38% over an 8-hand sample. So I don't think his play is all that bad, to be honest, because I feel like his opponent is just messing with him a lot. But it's still kind of spewy, so probably shouldn't shove it here. So yes, his opponent is probably bluff raising a lot, but he's probably also raising for thin value quite a bit. Second hand. Okay, so Daniel opted to squeeze with 7-8 suited. I am okay with the play. I don't think it's like terrible or anything. He gets 2 calls. So he has a weak gut shot once again. So the common theme here is that he is getting into nasty spots with his weak straight draws. Anyway, here I honestly don't mind just giving up. Yes, we have the gut shot. We don't have a backdoor flush draw. And if we hit a 9, we get dominated by King Queen. So I did not see the hand history, but I feel like that's probably what happened. Okay, good. So he didn't bet the flop, which I like. It's good to give up. And now I guess he gets cooled, which is pretty sad, I guess. So when this guy pots here, he's probably never folding. We lose to 16 combinations of King Queen, but we beat like 9 to 12 combinations of sets. We beat a bunch of 2 pairs as well. And if our opponent bet calls with Ace Queen or maybe Ace King of Diamonds or Ace Jack of Diamonds or maybe even just Ace Jack, that is fine. So I feel like jamming is the best line. Okay, so I think 9-8 is probably strong enough to call, but Daniel designed 9-8 to be a part of his 3-bet range, which I think is okay. He gets called. So I think he has some pretty interesting options here. The standard line is to bet. I wouldn't like check calling here, so I think going for check raise is actually pretty nice, and hope you get a blank turn and then you can just jam it in. So he opted to bet 70 cents, which I guess is okay, but I kind of prefer the check raising option more often, especially against guys who will step. And people do step at this 10-9-8 texture really often. Okay, so the 7 is really terrible. I feel like the button has King Jack and Ace Jack pretty often, as well as Jack 10, Jack 9, Jack 8 suited. Maybe even a hand like 6, 7 suited, or like 8, 6 suited. All those would improve. So Daniel opted to check the turn, which is good. So do we check call or check fold? I think check calling 2 pairs is okay. Like our opponent could have some King Queen, Ace Queen, perhaps a hand like... I'm struggling to think of suited connectors, suited stuff which has a flush draw. Like any 6 got there. I don't think people play 5-4 suited. I guess 5-4 of diamonds, that's like one combo. 6-4 of diamonds has a straight. I already mentioned King Queen, Ace Queen. Yeah, so there are like very few hands he actually beats. Okay, yes, I thought of something else. Ace X of diamonds. So like ace deuce, ace 3, ace 4, ace 5 of diamonds. That's another 4 combinations. Yeah, so I kind of struggle to think of hands which Daniel beats at the moment. I guess I don't mind the call all that much. But river, I think he has to fold. Yeah, this is a bit too loose. So maybe he's afraid of getting bluffed at. Might be a bit paranoid in this spot. So it might make sense to slow play sometimes, but that's a bit advanced, so I'll ignore that concept for now. Queen 3 suited. I like it. I do it myself as part of my default 3-bet range against a tighter 3 big blind opening range. So here, I don't mind c-betting the flop, I don't mind going for a delayed c-bet. Both are pretty close options. Okay, so now it's time to give up because we have no equity and I don't think we have more for equity on this turn card. It doesn't help our perceived range. So I think Daniel opted to triple barrel here, which is really spewy. So could be a result of tilt. I'm not sure, but I feel like he's probably tilting in this hand. So if you want to triple barrel as a bluff in this spot, you probably want to have blockers to the jack. So anything, if he somehow chooses to triple barrel, he should probably pick a Broadway hand. But I think a hand like 5-6 suited, 10-9, which all have the gut shots, or maybe a hand like Ace-King of hearts, all those are more suitable candidates to triple barrel. The turn is definitely a check for this particular hand. So 7-6 again, as I said, that is his part. The 7-6 off is a default part of his 3-betting range, yes. Okay, so betting the flop. I would just bet fold, to be honest. Like, the opponent could have some 8 flushes sometimes, and your straight outs are dead. Yeah, I think this is a clear bet fold. Maybe he jammed. Okay, he calls. I guess the turn plays itself, but I think the reverse implied odds are a bit too high for this hand. So Daniel opts to 3-bet 7-5 suited. This could very well be a call as well. Ooh, he opted to go for a delayed c-bet. I would actually prefer betting the flop, simply because we have 2 hearts. So we can barrel a 3 or a 4 or a heart. Yeah, so I kind of like betting more. With a hand like 6, 7 of clubs, I don't mind the delayed c-bet so much. Okay, so bad luck. And the opponent doesn't raise, which is crazy. Okay. Daniel opted to squeeze here. I prefer flatting, to be honest, but I'm not going to say that the squeeze is terrible. So I don't think Daniel can go for more than 1 street of value. I don't think a hand like pocket tens would call twice. It might even be kind of difficult for him to call even once. Yeah, so if you want to go for 1 street of value, it's probably best to check twice and bet the river. So the opponent chooses to run a 2 street bluff, and I think it's a very clear snap call. Daniel opts to squeeze ace-jack suited again. I think it's okay given the right reads, but in general I would flat here. I would squeeze ace-jack off though. This is a hand whereby it's really terrible if you get 4-betted. I guess if your opponent is not 4-bet bluffing, then raising to see where you're at, even though I really hate that idea most of the time, could be okay. Okay, so he bets the flop. Actually, like a min check raise. So if the opponent bets 60 cents, he makes it 120, and then he can jam the turn on a club, or maybe a 10. I kind of like that idea more. Okay, I hope he gives up now. See, I don't really like this bet. Without the diamond, you have no equity in the hand, and you do not block flushes from your opponent's range. Also, when the board coordinates, even though Daniel did pick up a gut shot himself, but his opponent is going to have like Jack 8, Jack 9, Jack 10, 10 8, 10 9, 7 6. All these hands are going to have straight draws, so I think this bet is not very good. Sizing wise, it's also really awkward. So you see 160 times 2 is 320, plus 255 is like 575. He's only left with 220 on the river, which is like maybe a 35% stack, or 40% of the pot left. It's really awkward. As a general rule of thumb, you should try not to leave less than half pot on the river. If not, it might be kind of obvious to your opponent that you are committed. Okay, in this hand, Daniel opts to go for a really large 3-bet with 8-7 suited. I think it's okay. So, having flopped the flush draw, I'm just going to bet twice by default. But we do turn the 7, so I think this is a good spot to check call the turn. Betting doesn't really accomplish much. Let your opponent bluff with King Queen, King Jack. Not King Jack, but King Queen, King 10, Queen 10, or maybe hands like 6, 6, 8 of clubs. Yes, you have the 8 of clubs, but just an example. Maybe 3, 4 of clubs. Yeah, so check call. Yeah, so I don't really like this bet. It serves no purpose. Betting here only makes sense if you want to triple barrel bluff, and if you think your opponent will fold out stronger hands like maybe top pair, or if you think he folds a jack here, then maybe the turn barrel is good. But in general, I think check calling maximizes his EV. So having taken the turn barrel line, I think he should shove the river to wrap the backdoor flush. So I guess his opponent wouldn't fold ace king. He may or may not fold ace queen, but he could potentially fold out all the weaker aces. Yeah. Okay, so now he 3-bets 8-9 suited, which is fine. He bets the flop, bets the turn. Okay, so I guess folding is fine. He's getting 30% pot odds, and he doesn't have that much equity here. With a weak gut shot and a 9 high flush draw, he has 25% equity at most. So bet folding is fine. In this hand, Daniel 3-bets queen 2 suited against cut off. I think this is way too loose, and also reflects like a lack of a proper pre-flop game plan. But yes, I think he's working on it already, so that's fine. Okay, so he has an overcut, maybe a weak backdoor straight draw, and a backdoor flush draw. Betting here can't be too bad. He opts to check, which is fine, I guess. I don't mind checking either. I feel like I would be a bit more inclined to bet with the backdoor flush draw. Going for a check raise bluff is also a pretty decent line, but I would prefer taking that line with straight potential as well. So maybe Jack 10 of spades could be a good hand to check raise bluff here. Okay, so he went for the check raise bluff, which I guess I kind of like. Maybe make it a bit larger, like 155. Making it 2x kind of incentivizes his opponent to float with overcuts, which would be really bad if that happens. Okay, so now give up. Okay, so he 3-bets under the gun. I think it's okay, but that's if we are using a 3-bet or full strategy from the small blind. But I don't think Daniel's using such a strategy. He's definitely calling sometimes. Yeah, he cold calls 9% in the small blind. So if that's the case, then there's really no point 3-betting ace 10 suited against under the gun. Anyway, now it's going to be a check call, I think. Betting here is... Honestly, betting here is okay, because his opponent is going to have like king queen, ace queen, ace king. And ace 10 can value bet against those. He loses to ace jack, but it's not like his opponent is going to have king jack, queen jack all that often. So I guess it's okay. I don't mind the bet so much, even though I would prefer checking. Okay, I really do not like this bet. So this bet basically folds out ace king, ace queen, and probably king queen without the spade. But his opponent does call again, which is really bad. Like, this is a very terrible call. I think he should definitely fold this hand, and this bet just isolates him against stronger hands. Daniel was probably better off checking and probably check calling, because I feel like under the gun has way fewer flushes as compared to straight draws and jacks. Wow, and this guy didn't bluff the river. That's insane. That's really bad. Ace 9, I do not mind a squeeze here. It's a bit loose, but it's okay. So going for the check raise is fine. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I think I played this hand a while. So yeah, bet turn and bet river. I feel like this guy's range is capped. So the plan was to go for a flop check raise and to jam a hard turn. King jack off, the opponent raises, and he 3-bets with queen 6 suited, which is okay. Okay, so on this texture, standard line is to bet twice and perhaps bluff the river. Having turned the pair, now it's a check call. So I think it's a link of Daniel to barrel the turn always with his pair plus draw. So basically by betting here, he's isolating himself against king x, jack 10. I guess 10-9, jack 9 might call once in a while, but if we think about this in terms of ranges, I think this bet is definitely inferior to checking. If we check here, our opponent will do the betting himself with his flush draws, I think. Yeah, so it's probably not a good bet. Yeah, so like he bets twice and checks the river. I feel like his opponent is going to check back a king most of the time. Okay, so that's all for light 3-bets. Let me pause the video and let's see if we can find more interesting spots. Okay, I'm back. So I saw earlier that Daniel was probably calling down triple barrels with way too many hands. So I'm not exactly sure what the win rate should look like for calling down. So I brought up my own stats, my own win rate for calling down, and my win rate is plus 900 BB per 100. So I'm not sure if that's a sample size issue or something, but perhaps this should be a positive win rate. So maybe I should check other strong winning players. Yeah, so okay, I guess the sample I have on him is really small, but he's also winning money. Average crack is a really strong 2, 5 and 510 zoom player. What other hands? Okay, maybe Magoko. Yeah, so I think on average most of them are actually making money with their river calls. So it's pretty crazy that Daniel's win rate is like super low. Okay, it's not super low, it's minus 1k, but actually this should be plus, it should be positive, which indicates that he is probably making very bad calls in a lot of spots. And just by looking at the hands here, I see way more red than green, so that probably says something. Okay, so let's go through the hands. He opens ace king, he faces a 3-bet, hits an ace. Okay, he's meant to get stacked. Hand 2, he calls pocket jacks. Okay, this is an obvious cooler. So maybe based on the first 2 hands, it might be running bad. He flats ace jack. Okay, that's fine. I feel a bit uncomfortable calling this. I feel like it's way too loose and spewy. But the opponent has a 3-bet stat of 30% over a small sample. It's probably 3 out of 10 times. So he makes kind of a loose call. Okay, so he does flop the open-ender. I guess it's fine to call once. Okay, I guess the other guy got cooled. Not a very interesting hand, but I think the pre-flop call was really loose. Okay, he defends king jack suited, which I like. Call flop. Call turn. Okay, I think generally I'm not folding top pair to 2 barrels, but I think this is a 4 on the river. I feel like people do not triple barrel bluff here. I guess the most sensible bluff here is like ace king with the ace of diamond or the king of diamond. Perhaps ace queen as well. But I think people usually give out on the river. So I'm not exactly sure, but I feel like this guy is 12-12 over 76 hands. Small sample, but a nittier player will often shut down and not run huge triple barrel bluffs. That's just how they play in general. So I guess this is the first mistake I spotted. Okay, Daniel calls with queen 10. Standard play is to flat here, especially if the bet is so large. If they were both deep, I wouldn't mind raising here, to be honest. Okay, so he hits the straight and the flush draw. And I did tell him earlier that when people are betting really large on a particular street, they're kind of indicating that they want to barrel on a future street. And that makes sense because it's okay to build up the pot if you are going to take it down later on anyway, right? Because you're just building up the pot to win more money later on. Okay, so I like the slow play. And the opponent pots the river again. So can we raise here or not? Given that the board paired. It's kind of close. I feel like he's wrapping a lot of strength, so probably flat here. So in this hand, Daniel flats the 4 bet. It's really small, so I think he has to call. The opponent bets really small, so he calls, which I like. So Daniel calls the 40% pot bet, which feels really loose to me, to be honest. And the river is a very clear fold, because this guy, who the heck bluffs here, right? I don't think I've ever seen a triple barrel bluff with this size. This is a bluff like less than 10% of the time, and he's getting 16% odds. I think this is a bluff like 5% of the time, so I think this is a very clear fold. Next hand, pocket threes, opponent 3 bets really small, so we have to call. Yes, call once, that's standard. I think turn is a fold, because if the board pairs the 7 or the 8, our pair is counterfeited. I guess he might potentially have like Jack 10, Jack 9, 10 9. But this is not a turn card where people would randomly barrel bluff. I guess I would call a 7 again. I wouldn't mind calling 5 5 and 6 6 again, because those hands have some straight potential. But 3 3 and deuce deuce is probably a fold. And this river call is just very spewy, because 10 9 got there, Jack 10, Jack 9 got there, the flush also got there as well. So you really need to know that your opponent is triple barreling with ace queen or ace king in order to justify the call here. So I think this is another spot where Daniel is definitely way too loose. Okay, so we have our opponent opening here. Our sample isn't huge. He doesn't fold much to 4 bets. 25% over 8 hands. So if we knew this much about him, that he is on the loser side, I wouldn't mind 3-betting queens. But anyway, flatting is reasonable. Okay, so I'm assuming the board ran out is blank, and calling down queens is probably standard. Yeah. Okay, so he calls once with ace 9, calls the turn, which is fine. Calling this down in the blind battle against someone who seems like a complete maniac, a complete lunatic, so I think calling here is fine. And he makes it 80 cents, so I think maniac fishers should be capable of bluffing with this size. I guess they have it really often as well, but the question here is whether we are good 19% of the time or more. I think yes, so I like the call. Okay, I do not know how many reads Daniel has on his opponent. 36-24, and he's a min raiser. I think ace king off is a very clear 3-bet for value. Okay, so he hits, so he calls thrice, I guess, which is fine. So he calls pre with jacks, and he calls a triple barrel. I guess jacks is like one of those hands where you have to call down. I might consider folding 9s and 7s. I would fold 9s and 7s, but jacks is way too strong. So it seems like he made about 2 to 3 mistakes, but in other spots, a lot of those were just coolers. Okay, he calls king 10, which is fine. Okay, this call is way too loose on the turn. The guy bets so small in the river. I guess you can't really fold top pair split, but the turn call was kind of bad, I guess. It's a bit too loose. Okay, so I think we did spot some general trends, just paying off in spots where people probably have way too many value hands. Yeah, so that's something that Daniel should keep in mind. Let's pause and maybe look for one more spot where we could potentially look for leaks. Okay, it took me a while, but I'm back. So I have an alias of some of the top regulars at NL 501k. So I've ran the preflop filter for all in preflop equals to true. So when you go all in, you should be winning money on average. So their win rate is like 600 big blinds per 100. I'm not too sure how accurate this is because my database isn't that huge. So let's look at mine now. So I run really bad. I'm minus 13,000 when I should be up 10,000. So my win rate in this spot is probably like plus 180 big blinds per 100. Now let's look at Daniel's win rate now. He runs like complete crap. He's minus 1,000 big blinds per 100. His net won is minus 30 when he should be close to break even. So yes, it's pretty clear that he's running very bad, but at the same time, he should be better than break even. So perhaps there are still some things which are not going well. So let's examine some of these spots and see whether he is getting it in a bit too light or not. Okay, this is a cooler. A suck out, I mean. Daniel has like 110 big blinds. He gets squeezed and he opts to back raise. So I'm not too sure how strong his reads were at this point. But if he does suspect that his opponent is bluffing a lot here and will fold more than half the time, then I think this is a good play. So 31.20, 6.7 over a small sample. I guess it's okay. Yeah, I think it's okay, especially given especially based on the results. That guy is squeezing and calling it off with sixes. That's pretty crazy. Next hand is king. This feels like a standard cooler spot, cut off versus small line. So Daniel mentioned he felt like he was running into the nuts very often. He felt like his ace king always ran into aces. So it could be a sample size type of thing. I think it's probably still good to 4-bet ace king most of the time. But of course, if his opponent were really tight, then flatting ace king against a 3-bet, even from the cutoff, could be a reasonable alternative line. Kings, okay, that guy was crazy enough to 5-bet this. Here we have a standard ace king versus queens. Could we have folded? This is the question. And my answer, to be honest, is yes. This is not a good stack off. I don't blame Daniel for stacking off because I used to stack off in this spot all the time. We don't value 4-bet something to fold, right? Wrong. In this particular spot, if I were playing higher limits and people can show up with bluffs in this spot, but in general, people will make it like 160 to 180 at higher limits so that they are not committed. In this case, this guy is putting in like 40% of his stack. Just think about it. If your opponent had ace king or queens or jacks, would he want to make a small 4-bet and risk having you call and then having a bet flop appear? I guess the answer is not for most players. So I also feel like people underuse this move as a bluff at the lower limits. Even at like NL 50, NL 100 a few years ago, this move was the nuts. It was like pocket aces more than 70% of the time, from my own experience. So with that said, I would hero fold here with queens as played. If Small blind jams, I would call it off with queens, knowing that he has ace, king, jacks, and queens himself pretty often. But when he makes a min 5 bet, we can narrow down his range to aces most of the time, and perhaps kings some smaller percentage of the time, with hardly any bluffs, and rarely with ace, king, and queens. Okay, Daniel probably saw his opponent's stats, 22% 3-bet, but as I say a lot of times, don't 3-bet, don't read too much into stats with low sample. So he 4-bets and calls it off, which isn't the end of the world, but generally you're just isolating yourself against aces and kings a lot of the time, so I don't really like it. Okay, this is a typical cooler spot, that's fine. Back raising queens is fine. Yes, another cooler. So you can see he's experiencing a lot of coolers here. Okay, let's see if he can hero 4 in any of these spots. 2018 4.8, I don't think so. 24 16 5.6, no. 15 11 7.5. Okay, this might be the guy to hero 4, but he opens less than 30%. His 3-bet is 7.5% over a small sample of 200. I guess 200 hands is kind of a high sample for NL5 standards, because the player pool is just so huge. I guess it's okay to jam. We could assume that this guy is 4-betting a lot based on his 3-bet stat. But at the same time, based on his VP, IP, and PFR, it makes me believe that he isn't it. So I'm kind of torn here. I'm getting like conflicting information, but I guess you can't really go wrong jamming ace king. So let's not talk too much about that. Okay, this guy 4-bet jams ace jack, which is crazy. And okay, this guy is really aggro, so another cooler. Yeah, so okay, so in general, I think maybe 1 or 2 small mistakes. Like the queens could have been hero folded. The ace king 4-bet is a bit too loose. But all in all, I think Daniel basically ran like crap. Yeah, so he's probably not. I feel like he is probably handling pre-flop all-in spots pretty decently, so that shouldn't be a huge issue. Okay, so that's all. Thank you for watching. See you guys in the next video.